Everyone. How are y'all doing? Whew, this is exciting. I see lots of faces down here who are getting very excited in the chat because of the fact that Clue One for the Meabh Knit Along has been launched today. I can see there's been over the last little few minutes, I think it's probably the last few minutes, I can see your faces. We've got Carol from Virginia, Marie from California, Liz from Jefferson, Mel, hey Mel from New York. Um, Carol, you are casting on because you can't count with the talking going on. You have my sympathies. It is so hard to actually keep track of things if you've got somebody sitting there talking in one ear and you look down and you have to keep recounting the same number of stitches. But I hope you've all found where the clue is. You're ready to go. If you've read through it and you've got a couple of questions and you're kind of wondering what it's about or where you should start, just pop them on up there and I'll answer them as we go through. I will give you a little bit of an overview of what we're doing and what the different steps and the different stages are in the sweater as well. Um, Hi, Catherine we've got Stratford upon Avon. And yeah, so knock Carol, you're right. It is one from the UK. That's right. Lucy, hi, and we've got Joni from Utah, Rhonda from Edinburgh. There we go. We're moving a little bit over to this side of the world. Maggie from Pennsylvania, and Liz, of course, from Ireland, up the country, flying the Irish flag there. Dawn from Toronto. So we're adding in a few more countries there. We have, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Manu, I think, from the Alps. And we have California, Sammy Nelson from California, Audrey from Chattanooga, Karen from Wisconsin. We've got Chicago, Colorado, Montana. Hey Sheila, how are you? We have Simone from Germany and Sheila from North Carolina. And we have Indiana from the we have Megan from Indiana. And we have I'm going to pronounce it here, Lorinda, I think, from North British Columbia. So great mix of people here. Have you had a chance to open up the pattern and start reading through? Does it make sense to you? If you want a little bit more clarification, then kind of just, as I said, just put the questions over there. And if it works here, I'm going to see if I can answer them. There's been some really good chat on KnitHub, which I think is very helpful with people taking a look at gauge and figuring out their gauge. So the two big things that I'm finding seem to be going on with gauge is, first one is keeping an eye on the difference in the gauge between blocked and unblocked. So it is with this, I find, particularly with woolen spun, really important to block your swatch, because it tends to open and relax and expand quite a bit when you're knitting it. Catherine, am I wearing Meabh? No, I'm actually wearing Brutach because I wanted Meabh over here so I could point it out. But the Brutach, the reason I'm wearing this is a previous, hang on, I'll stand up here. You can see it. It's a shorter one and it's got a brioche lace panel, but it's in Nua worsted. So I wanted to give you an idea of what the fabric is going to look like in Nua worsted, because it's definitely, it has a different quality to it. The stitches probably have a little bit more definition, but because it's a worsted spun, it's a bit heavier. It's not super wash, so you don't get that super stretch out, but it's a little heavier, so you get a bit more drape, and you have to be careful about it not elongating too much as it's being worn. But it does make for a very comfortable next to the skin sweater for sure if you're knitting one in Nua worsted. So yeah, back to the swatches. There's blocking, absolutely block. And then the other one is taking a look at doing your swatch in the round. Now, I know I talk about that a lot, the idea of swatching in the round, but for this, it can actually make a difference in the opposite direction, because Most people's purl stitches are a little bit looser than their knit. It's just by the nature of the purl stitch, it wraps a little further around the needle, and so it's just it makes a looser stitch. Normally, when you go from knitting flat with stockinette stitch, you've got knit on one side and purl on the wrong side. So it means that when you're knitting flat, it's tend to be a slightly looser gauge, particularly the row gauge. And for a lot of people, then when they go on the round, every stitch is knit, and so it becomes a tighter gauge. Brioche does the opposite because the first part here, not very far, only to where you separate for the neck, you're going to be doing brioche flat. And that's going to have only brioche knit stitch. So it'll be basically the knit stitch and then the slip-on yarn overs on each side. So it tends to be a little bit snugger. So when you come down to brioche in the round, you're then going to be doing one round with your brioche knit. And then the second round is going to be having brioche purl. So you're likely to find that when you start working this in the round, you could get a slighter, looser gauge. So if that happened to any of you, just let me know. I'm just curious because I definitely found that I had a slightly looser gauge with it knit in the round. And for that it meant that I actually went with that gauge in the pattern because I didn't want to give two separate gauges for one flat and one in the round. But it is a little bit tighter up on the top. And then as soon as I joined here, it was definitely a little looser. So that's the gauge that you'll see in the pattern. So I'll often end up kind of figuring out which is the most dominant gauge and which is one that's going to be most useful to you in the pattern. So do make sure that you kind of keep an eye on that. And if you didn't swatch in the round and you were kind of happy with the flat, watch when you do join that it's not getting too big. So some of you may have seen from some of I've got a little designer series going on this where I'm detailing what happened as I was going through. So the first part of this, when I did it, I cast on the stitches here and I started for the increases, and it ended up growing enormously. Like it really grew. And so it very quickly became way too big. I actually set it aside. I didn't rip it this time, but I set it aside and then I restarted with less stitches, narrower shoulder. But it was one that it was a trial and error process for me going through it. Oh, I see we've got a couple of people in here. We've got Leah from BC. Oh, you had a nice swim this morning. I'm a little bit jealous. That would be nice. We've got Donna from middle of Canada. Liz, Brutach is one of your favorite knits to wear. It's really wearable, isn't it? Yeah, it's a very pleasant knit to wear. So if you want another um, brioche knit after you finished Maeve, then Brutach can go onto your list. I'm by myself today because Hannah normally helps and puts some links in there, but she's away. But I will put the Brutach link in when I'm putting up the notes afterwards, so you can get it. Now, Karen, is the fabric squishy after blocking, not getting stretched out of shape? Great question, Karen. So blocking can mean a lot of things, and a lot you may hear when I say blocking, stretch it, but I don't mean that. I just mean get it wet, get it washed, squeeze it, and then you lay out very, very gently. But with the woolen spun, because the fibers change quite a bit and fill out when it's blocked, you never stretch it, you're just gently letting it open up. So you actually get an even fluffier and bouncier fabric after blocking with it, but you don't want to be stretching it out because then you'll have a really flat, lifeless fabric. Like the only time I would end up stretching when I'm blocking is going to be if I do a lace pattern or something where I really want to open up the stitch pattern. Outside of that, I'm never going to stretch fabric out really. Oh, this is interesting. Anne-Marie said you were the opposite for brioche. Your flat was tighter than in the ground. No, that was what I was saying is that, yeah, that's my experience is the flat knitting because it's all knit is going to be tighter. And then when you start working in the round, because there's brioche purl, it's going to be looser. So the flat will be a little tighter, and generally for brioche in the round will be a little bit looser. So it's worth kind of keeping an eye on it. Carol's seriously considering it. You're giving into the turmoil. Donna, you found that all of your knitting in the round is looser. Oh, that's really interesting. Donna, you were asking, what about alpaca wool? Well, I would be careful with alpaca, particularly 100% alpaca, because I find it's very, very slippy and it has a tendency of kind of opening up or stretching out of shape. So alpaca blend is fine, it's perfect, but it's going to be, it will grow a little bit, I find, with blocking. So keep an eye on it. And it can also depend on the type of alpaca. Some of it is going to be a little slippier, but if you've got a nice rustic wool, it should help it hold the shape. But block it and see how it behaves, but it should have a lovely bounce and look really nice afterwards and be super warm because alpaca is very warm. And when you combine that with brioche, you're going to have a very warm sweater. So enjoy your warm sweater. So now I'm going to have a look at the way Maeve is put together and turn her around here because this is where we start. I'll probably take this off her in a second so that you can see. Oh, I nearly had an accident there. So I started with the stitches across the back cast on here. And then I had a couple of stitches for the top of the sleeves and then just one in the front. And so what you're going to do, I will take it off here. Here we go. And I apologize that I've left her without her sweater, but I can put it back on again in a minute. But this way you can see it a bit better. So this is what the back of it looks like when you get started. So this to here is the back of the neck. Now you can see the edging is put on afterwards. Then you'll start with stitches across here for the sleeve, just a couple of stitches, and then just one in the front. So what we're going to be doing then is just working brioche back and forth. But while you're working brioche, you'll have a marker on each side of your sleeve here, and there's going to be a brioche knit outside for on the right side of the work here. And you're going to be doing a make three. So that is the simplest kind of brioche increase. So it's a brioche knit, yarn over, and a brioche knit. So you're making 3 stitches out of that one brioche stitch. And the benefit of that, of course, is that when you're doing 2 increases like that together, you can keep going with your brioche pattern because it's in a rhythm of 2. It's a brioche knit, slip one yarn over. So by doing a double increase, it means that you're never trying to do some weird brioche hybrid. It's always a full brioche stitch. And then on the next row, you'll incorporate those new stitches into the brioche pattern. So obviously you'll be able to do one as a slip one yarn over, but instead of a brioche knit on that one, it's just going to be a knit stitch. And then on the next row, it's going to be right back to where it is. Now, normally with brioche, because of the fact that you're basically working every second row, so that at 1 row, 2 rows knit, what you'll see on the knitting is only going to be 1 row. Normally, you're going to have those increases spaced quite far apart. But in order to create this increase that comes right out across here for our shoulder stitch, we're going to be increasing every right side row. So it's a really tightly packed increases. But what that will mean is it's going to create this beautiful shoulder panel that comes out here. And the other thing we're going to do is after you do your first increase row, let me hold it up here. We're going to do an increase in here and in here. So there's one increase in the middle of a double increase here and a double increase here. That only happens once just up at the top, but it's actually really important because if you don't have that, it'll mean that with all of these huge increases out here, the panel here as it works down, it's not going to be able to stretch out, and so it will push this up the back, so it will stick up and be a little high up the back. So that's the reason why we've got that one increase in there, is it is so it'll sit down and sit comfortably on the back of the neck. So that's the reason for that. So you're going to begin first of all with all of those, and when you've finished, it'll come to the edge here. Now it is important with this that normally you'd be knitting for most of the time when you're doing different types of sweaters, so it's right up on the edge and it's going to be your set-in sleeve. With the contiguous shoulder construction, you actually want it finished a bit further in than you normally would a set-in sleeve. And the reason for that is if it comes out too far, it can end up with a really puffy or a really oversized sleeve. So you do want that a little bit further in. So if you think it looks a little bit far in, don't worry, that's actually probably a good thing so that the rest of it can kind of sit around the edge of the sleeves. So once you've got all of those done according to the pattern, then that marker that you had outside that you were doing your brioche increase, You want to use that stitch now for your sleeve. So you're going to move the marker out over here, and you'll move the mark out over here. So that means that that brioche knit stitch is now inside the sleeve. So it'll go from, I think it's 3 stitches to 5 stitches. And all you're going to do then is the very same increase, but this time it's on the inside of the sleeve on each side. And you do a few every right side row. So very, very tightly packed together, but just a few. And then you move it to every second right side row. So it spaces it out and curves it. And this is somewhere that if you want a more gentle start to the sleeve curve, you can actually do a few less increases closely packed together, and you could even do them all every second row, and it'll still work. It'll just change the shape of the sleeve. And the last thing, not quite the last thing, second last thing we'll be doing here is the neck increases. So you can see down here, where, let me hold it up nice and close, you've got some neck increases working across the front. Those ones are a slightly different increase. So I'm doing make two left and make brioche make two left and brioche make two right. So it's a slightly more complex increase, but I find it's more subtle and it gives you a really nice directional line here. So it's very good for somewhere like that, where at the front of the neck, we want it to be a very obvious increase. So once you finish those, you'll then cast on across the front of the neck. And at that point, you're going to knit straight down. So you'll just be knitting everything, which will be the sleeves, the body, and the other sleeve in the round all the way down, for most of the way down to the bottom of your armhole. So you're almost there, but you're going to leave, there'll be a few more rows, because you can see here, there's just a couple of increases happening again on the armhole side. So you're going to swap that stitch over again. So your brioche knit is in here. You'll do a few increases, and then we'll be casting on for the underarm. So you can see how, I'm going to pop her up here. Maybe you can still see it, hopefully. So you go from increases for the shoulder, then the stitch moves in and it becomes increases for the sleeve. First of all, every right side row, then every right and wrong side row. Then you move on to neck increases. And then after it's joined, you work straight for a bit and you move that increase stitch, or the brioche knit stitch, out again rather, so that it's with the body, and you do your make 3 again there. So those are the different steps that you'll see, and they're divided into sections in the pattern. And each one of those, you can kind of play around where different things happen. So if you want a deeper neckline, you can wait a little bit longer before you start doing the increases. So this part's deeper. If you want a bigger or a shorter armhole, you can, the section where it's in the round where there's no other increases or decreases, you can do that. If you want a narrower or a wider shoulder, you can, well, wider is a little tricky, but it can be done. You could take some of the armhole increases underneath and put it across here, but I would be really careful making that too much wider, because I think you can end up with coming out a little bit too wide on the shoulder if you do that. Let me have a quick look. Carol, will I demonstrate this in the workshop? Okay, as I am not sure what you're asking about, I'm going to need you to just clarify, demonstrate what. I've demonstrated most things, but I don't want to give a blanket, yes, I'm demonstrating. So just let me know what specific technique you're talking about in there. Bread, wine, and roses. This part is what makes it hard for you to determine the length you need for the shoulder. You're not sure if you need to increase for broad shoulders, since you're not sure how far in that shoulder to end. Well, I can't tell you on your exact shoulder, I think that this is something that you can actually even go ahead and work it as far as it's worked in the pattern. Try it on, and you don't want it right out to the end. You want a little bit up, like maybe an inch. I don't know if your inches or centimeters, a little bit further up, so that the sleeve cap will start a little bit further up. But if you do find you need it wider, then what you want to do is some of those increases you have down there, just work them up here, and then you work less increases down there. So you're basically taking those increases from here and putting them back up. But I think you can, as you go, you can try it on and you can see if you think you need it. But if you're sitting between and undecided, I would err on the side of having it a little more narrow rather than a little more wide, because it will make the top of the sleeve a bit fuller, you know. Audrey, you're having the same issue of how much to choose for your shoulders. I'd say start with as it's written because you're putting it out. Then steam block, try it on, and just be aware that it will come further out. You might actually find the video I showed of me trying it on in process. So in the designer diaries we put up, where I'm trying it on as I'm going, and you can see what it looks like and what I'm talking about in terms of the fuller shoulder and the fuller sleeve. So, fortunately, with this type of construction, you can continue to knit it as far as written, and then you can actually make your decision, which I think it makes it much easier to decide that you can put it on and you can see what it looks like. Um, Jess, your biggest problem with brioche is fixing errors. Yes, I hear you. I think it's everybody's biggest problem with brioche. It can absolutely be done, but it's definitely tricky. So, like if the kind of mistake that I find that I sometimes make, a little bit less with this, is if one of the loops kind of gets dropped down. So I do have a brioche fixing video up on YouTube that I'll make sure to drop in the link down below here. And I've put a little bit, and I'll put the link as well in KnitHub, so that if you need some help on fixing brioche, that you have plenty of tools there. But it is tricky for sure. I would say as well that use some lifelines. So if after you reach the first stage here, you're happy with it, drop a lifeline through, so that if you need to drop back, you don't have to kind of start from scratch and things like that, you know. Um, which cast on is at the beginning. So with this one, I did a long tail cast on, but I did it very loose. You can actually probably see it in the videos. And the reason for that is I didn't want the neck to stretch out too much, but I did want enough of a stretch that the brioche obviously can be, yeah, basically is not going to get pulled out too much. So long tail cast on, but just I was quite relaxed with my tensioning as I was doing it. Um, Oh, I'm glad the shoulder modification clarification helped. Good, good. But yeah, I mean, I think that normally I would say go to the edge of this, but this definitely a little bit further in than you think you're going to need is going to be very helpful. Mel, how would I control a loose purl in the round? Good question. Like the biggest, I mean, the main one really is dropping down a needle size if you're not getting gauge. So just with your swatch, figure out what needle size is going to work best for you is probably going to be the best thing you can do. Like outside of that, it would be changing your style of purling, but I'd say probably needle size should do the job for you. Um, I'm just looking up here. Oh yeah, Liz is just clarifying that the Brutach is not the same construction. No, it is not. The Brutach is drop shoulder. Let me hold my arms out. It's drop shoulder, so it's straight down the back and then straight down to here, and then you join in the round. And then the sleeves are in stockinette stitch. So this is a different construction. I have never attempted contiguous and brioche, and I think it's very straightforward to knit. It was a bit of a demon to try and write. I'll just let you know that there there was a lot of iterations, but I actually think that the end pattern is very pleasant and very straightforward to work through. Nancy, would a cable cast on work? Yep, it would absolutely work, but again, just make sure it's not too tight. So if you do a cast on and when you're looking at it, it looks like it's pulling in too tight and it's not going to sit well in your neck, then you might need to review and do something with a little bit more stretch. Like often with brioche, I will do an Italian cast on, but the Italian cast on is going to give you huge amount of stretch. And you don't want that at the back of the neck. It won't have any cohesion. So that's why I ended up with the long tail. Because for a lot of other brioche projects, I will end up using the Italian, but I didn't find it great with this one. Um, Simone, where's the best point in the round to start a new ball of yarn? Usually I'll try and aim for around the side or at the back of it should be fine. I would suggest what I do with both of the yarns I've used, because they are non-superwash. I will always use a felted join, which I find is going to give you a lot more flexibility. So once it's not on the front with the felted join, you can kind of get away with most of the rest of it joining, I think. But yeah, definitely just not the front. And actually, I should point that out. So with the sweater, when you join in the front normally, like this. You've gone back and forth, you've cast on stitches across here, and I don't want to start my round here. So we actually broke the yarn, slipped the stitches until you came over here, and I've actually started my round in the middle of my back. So that is just something to kind of, in case it looks a little bit strange, the reason for that was specifically because I didn't want the center of my round in up here, because very often you'll end up with just a little bit of a blimp, and it's going to work much better in the middle of the back. So in case you're wondering what's going on with that, that is the reason for it. Um, uh, Rhonda, do I start the round once the next? I think I actually just realized I had preemptively answered that. So you start you don't start the round there. You cast on, and then you slip the stitches, and then you start in the middle of the back, and you start from there. Um, Avila, you read Italian cast on for brioche. Not in this case. Normally I would do Italian cast on, but because we don't want the neck to stretch out too much, I opted to use the long tail cast on, which is going to have a little bit more cohesion. So in this case, I would suggest having a cast on that's a little snugger. The long tail cast on, if you're happy enough to do the cable cast on a little looser, that will work as well for you. Audrey, how will it work if you want to add an inch to the neckline? So if you want to add an inch to the neckline, because of the fact that you are going back and forth, you're doing sleeves, and then you're going to be doing, and then you start doing the increases here, all you're going to want to do is you'll just, the place where you start your increases for your neck, you just start them a little later. So it's going to drop it down a little further. But there should be no other changes, because you can still keep doing, if the sleeve increases for your size are still happening, you can keep doing those. They can happen independently of the neck. And then you may just have the neck increases happening a little bit later. And it'll be a little bit later that you join. So you'll just take some of those stitches that from in the round down here and put them basically as rows back and forth up there. But it should, you can try it on and you can decide how you want it to go, because you can see here how far down, you calculate how many rows you've got for this, and so how far down all of the increases work. Lucy, is the twisted German cast on okay as well? It should be fine, I think. Just keep an eye on whether it's got enough stretch afterwards, or if, and just make sure it's not too tight. But yeah, the twisted German can actually be a nice one because it does have a little bit of stretch. So yeah, that would definitely be a good option, I think. Make sure I didn't. I know that there was that one question a little bit earlier on that I didn't get to because I didn't, I wasn't sure if it was going to, someone asking if something was demonstrated in, where was it again? I've kind of seen, yeah, it was Carol. You were asking if that was demonstrated in the workshop. So if you're still on here, Carol, give me a shout and let me know what technique you were asking about, how it was demonstrated, because I wasn't really sure, because it got posted as I was talking. So I do have here as well, I brought a couple of swatches to bring up to show you what different colors look like. So this one here is a brioche swatch in our watercolor, I think is the Ishka color. So this is the same, this is the one that was custom for the Celtic Knits Club this year. So I think that actually is really nice in the yarn. But to give you an idea of, this is a little bit more drape. This one is a little bit, I won't say, these haven't been blocked, of course, but it's got a little bit more cohesion, and this one is going to drape a bit more. So they both work, they just look different. And you can see that this one is kind of a little, thank you, Melvia, lock. I knew I was getting the name wrong. So yes, this is the lock color I was talking about here. But I was going to actually say here, I'm going to put this up because for this knit along, we've got this first live, and then in 4 weeks, I'm going to have another one. But for Clue 2, I won't be having a live because I've got a lot of traffic, like an insane amount of teaching over the next few weeks. In fact, it's so much that I can only look a day or two ahead because I get a little bit overwhelmed. So it means that we're going to have the final clue where I'll talk through things, but the one in between, there won't be a clue. Obviously, videos are there and the knit up is there, but I will just very briefly talk about what will be coming up in clue 2. So when you join in the round, most of it's going to be straightforward, and the only thing that's a little different are these panels. Let me hold up one here. I'm going to put it back on here because it'll be easier to show what's happening, I think, with this. All right. So the panels look more complicated than they are, but we're actually using the same, this panel that doesn't have any stitches. Let me make sure you can see it here. It's got no increases and decreases in the middle, and the increases and decreases happen here. So you've got increase on this side and a decrease on this side, so it moves it over. And the same on this one over here. And then once you reach past this point, it starts moving in the other direction. So it's really subtle, and it doesn't actually change the stitch count. But because you're creating this bias panel, it actually does create just a little bit of a curve, even though you're not increasing or decreasing the stitches. So all of the stitches stay the same all the way down. You're just using increases and decreases to move this little panel or stretch of brioche stitches first out and then straight for a little bit here and then back in. So it's kind of cool that it still creates a curved effect because of that biasing. Oh, Carl, you're saying it's okay. All these complicated instructions like moving stitches to create shoulder seams. Um, Basically, they are all in the pattern. So if you follow through the pattern, it'll say specifically, you will now move your stitch markers out. You've got this many stitches here and this many stitches here. So it's really, really explicit. So don't worry. I'm explaining it the way I think about it, where I like having an overview, like a little map in my head, so I know where everything's going to go. But not everyone thinks about it that way. So if you find that a little bit confusing, then just ignore that, take the pattern out, and just follow each section of the pattern down, and you'll be fine. And yes, that would be shown in the video where I'll talk about moving the stitch markers. And like with a lot of things in knitting, it can be a little bit more complicated to talk about them than it is to actually demo them. So just remember that when you're knitting through it, you'll probably go, oh, this is what she means. This makes total sense to me. So yeah, just keep that in mind, that it's definitely easier on the needles as you're going through, and you can see them all as you're looking at it. So if there are any more questions, just pop them up. In the meantime, if there are any of you who were on the sweater session yesterday, thank you so much. So anyone who hasn't heard of this, we've got our sweater society is currently live. It'll still be open for a few more weeks. We have a monthly sweater session where I talk through fit and sizing and specifically different kinds of construction moving over the month. So it's over the full year. I'll pop the link down below if you haven't heard about it, and you want to learn a little bit more. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me here today, and I will pop this up afterwards. If you're watching afterwards and you have any questions, just put them down in the comments, and you can see all of the other comments coming up along the side as you watch it as well from over the live session. So thank you very much. Oh, someone was saying you missed yesterday, you couldn't find the link. So the links are going to be in a couple of places. On Teachable, where you've got the Zoom session, I will always put the next upcoming link there. There's an email sent out to you if you have signed up for email notifications. Not everyone has. That gets sent out when that next month drops. And we've also got it pinned to the top of our Knit Hub space with all of the Zoom link information up there. So between the three of them, hopefully you'll be able to find the link and see where it is for upcoming Sweater Society sessions. So thank you very much, everyone.